The world had grown quiet, a vast landscape of forgotten echoes and shifting sands that stretched beyond the reach of memory. On the first page of this journey, we find only the stillness of a civilization that opted for silence over the clamor of war. The ruins peek through the dunes like the ribs of a fallen giant, bleached white by a sun that no longer knows how to set. This is the beginning of the end, or perhaps the end of a long and lonely beginning.
Deep within the heart of the wasteland, a lone figure moved against the backdrop of the horizon, her silhouette a sharp contrast to the soft curves of the earth. She carried a staff tipped with a dormant crystal, a relic of a time when the world was filled with light and song. Every step she took left a momentary impression in the dust, only to be erased by the persistent, dry wind. Her name was Alara, and she was the last seeker of the great harmonic.
I can feel the resonance growing stronger beneath the soles of my boots, as if the ground itself is trying to speak to me. It has been 3 days since I saw the last signs of life, but the maps in my mind tell me the archive is near. If the legends are true, the silence of this world is not a curse, but a seal waiting for the right key. I must find the entrance before the sandstorms reclaim the path for another century.
The path led Alara to a massive structure that rose abruptly from the desert floor, a monolith of obsidian and glass that defied the elements. Its surface was so polished that it reflected the entire sky, creating the illusion of a doorway into the heavens themselves. There were no visible seams or handles, only a series of geometric patterns that hummed with a low-frequency vibration. This was the gate to the Silent Archive, a place where the history of all things was kept in the dark.
It is larger than I ever imagined, and the cold radiating from the stone is enough to freeze the very air around me. I have brought the catalyst, the last piece of the celestial engine that my family guarded for generations. If I place it here, in the center of the constellation carved into the glass, the mechanisms should awaken. Please, let the stories be true, for I have no strength left to return to the empty cities.
As the crystal touched the stone, a sound like a long-forgotten chord vibrated through the air, shattering the absolute quiet of the desert. The monolith began to shift, its glass panels sliding over one another with a fluid grace that defied their massive weight. A narrow passageway opened, revealing a staircase that descended into the cool, blue-lit depths of the earth. Alara hesitated for only a second before stepping into the threshold, her staff flaring to life with a warm amber glow. Who approaches the halls of the unwritten, carrying the light of the dead stars in their palm? You are small, seeker, and your breath smells of the dust and the dying world outside these walls. Many have come to this gate seeking power, but only those who seek understanding are permitted to pass the first trial. Speak your purpose clearly, or let the silence of the archive claim you as it has claimed so many others. The sentinel's voice was not a sound, but a vibration that Alara felt in her teeth and the marrow of her bones. She stood before the Titan, dwarfed by its sheer scale, yet she did not lower her staff or avert her gaze. The chamber was filled with the statues of those who had failed, turned to stone by their own fear and greed. Alara knew that her answer would determine whether she became a hero of the new age or another monument to failure.
I do not seek gold, nor do I seek the weapons of the ancients to rule over the ashes of the world. I seek the song of restoration, the frequency that can bring the water back to the rivers and the green to the plains. My people are starving in the shadows of the old world.
Your heart beats with the rhythm of the true seekers, a chaotic but honest pulse that resonates with the core of the archive. It has been eons since a mortal spoke of restoration instead of conquest, and the stones have grown tired of waiting. You may pass, but know that the knowledge you seek is heavy and will change the way you see the universe forever. Follow the light of the blue crystals and do not look back at the shadows that follow.
The deeper Alara descended, the more the archive revealed its true nature as a repository of every soul that had ever lived. Walls of crystalline memory stretched for miles, each one glowing with a different hue, depending on the emotions stored within. She saw scenes of festivals long forgotten, of quiet moments between lovers, and of the first fires ever lit by man. It was a library not of books, but of lived experiences, preserved in the cold embrace of the earth.
It is overwhelming to see so much life in a place that has been dead to me for so long. Every crystal I pass seems to whisper a name, a secret, or a dream that never came to fruition in the world above. I feel like an intruder in a cathedral of ghosts, yet I cannot help but be moved by the beauty of what we once were. Somewhere in this sea of memories is the one I need, the one that can save the future.
The air grew thicker with the scent of ozone and ancient dust as she reached the chamber of the first spark. Here, the very foundations of the archive were built around a floating orb of pure white energy that hummed with terrifying power. This was the source of the Great Harmonic, the original vibration from which all life in the valley had once sprung. But the orb was fractured, its light leaking out in jagged sparks that vanished into the dark ceiling.
The heart of the world is breaking, just as the legends said it would, if the songs were ever forgotten. The fractures are growing deeper, and I can hear the engine of reality grinding against itself in a desperate attempt to stay whole. I must use my staff to bridge the gap and channel my own life force into the core to seal the wounds. It is a terrifying prospect, but there is no one else left to do it.
She raised her staff, and the crystal at its tip began to pulsate in perfect synchronicity with the fractured orb. As the two energies met, a bridge of golden light formed between Alara and the source of all things. The force of the connection was nearly unbearable, threatening to pull the very thoughts from her mind and the breath from her lungs. She braced herself against the stone floor, her boots skidding as she poured every ounce of her will into the stabilization.
Hold fast, little seeker, for the shadows of the void are drawn to the light you are creating. They are the remnants of the silence, the entropy that wishes with a world to remain a graveyard forever. Do not let them whisper doubts into your ear, for they have no power over a heart that beats for others. The archive is watching, and for the first time in millennia, it is rooting for a mortal to succeed.
From the corners of the room, the shadows of silence began to creep forward, their forms shifting like smoke in a gale. They were not creatures of flesh and blood, but manifestations of the world's despair and the weight of the long quiet. They reached for Alara with elongated fingers, trying to snuff out the light of her staff and the hope in her heart. Alara screamed as the cold of their presence touched her skin, but she refused to let go of the connection.
I will not be the one to let the darkness win. My mother told me that the light is not something we own, but something we carry for a little while until we can pass it on. This spark belongs to the children who will never know the desert, and to the trees that will grow where there is now only sand. Be gone, you shadows of nothingness, for I am the voice of the living world.
With a final, desperate surge of energy, the fractures in the orb began to knit themselves back together under Alara's command. The white light intensified until it was impossible to see, filling the chamber and the entire archive with a blinding radiance. The shadows were incinerated instantly, their silent screams echoing through the halls, before they were erased from existence. For a moment, there was no Alara, and no archive, only the pure, undivided frequency of life.
Is it over? I can no longer feel the ground beneath my feet, only the sensation of falling through a sea of stars. The sound, it is not silence anymore, but 1,000 voices singing in harmony, a song of rain and growth and laughter. I feel so light, as if the weight of the world has finally been lifted, and I can finally rest. But I must see it. I must see if the world has changed.
The light faded slowly, leaving Alara standing in the center of the chamber, her staff now a dull, ordinary piece of wood. The great sentinel stood before her, its stone face transformed into a look of profound respect and ancient joy. The archive was no longer a tomb, but a beacon, its crystals glowing with a steady, nourishing light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Outside, the world was beginning to react to the change that had been wrought in the deep.
You have done what was thought impossible, Seeker. You have retuned the world to the frequency of hope. The clouds are already gathering over the Iron Canyons, and the first rains in 1,000 years will soon fall upon the thirsty soil. Go now, return to your people and tell them that the age of silence has ended. You are the architect of the new dawn, and your name will be the first song they learn to sing.
Alara climbed the long staircase back to the surface, her legs heavy, but her spirit lighter than it had ever been. When she emerged from the obsidian monolith, the sky was no longer a bruised purple, but a vibrant, living blue. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a sound she had only heard in the stories of the elders, and the smell of wet earth began to fill the air. The desert was still there, but it no longer felt like a grave. It felt like a garden waiting to bloom.
Rain. I never knew that water falling from the sky could be so beautiful, or that the air could feel so clean. Each drop that hits the sand is a promise kept, a sign that the sacrifice was worth every step of the journey. I want to run through the dunes and scream at the top of my lungs just to hear the world answer back. The silence is finally broken, and the music has returned to the land.
She began the long walk home, but this time she did not walk alone, for the spirits of the archive seemed to walk beside her. Every step she took now left a footprint that stayed, a mark on a world that was learning to remember itself. The journey that had begun in desperation was ending in a symphony of color and sound. As the first green shoots began to poke through the sand, Alara knew that the story of the silent world was finally over. Days turned into weeks, and the transformation of the landscape was nothing short of a miracle. Rivers that had been dry for millennia began to flow with crystalline water, carving new paths through the ancient ruins. Birds that had survived in the hidden corners of the world took to the skies, their songs filling the air with a chaotic joy. Alara watched from a high ridge as her home city, once a place of gray despair, began to stir with the energy of a new season.
Look at it all. The world is waking up, and it is more vibrant than I ever dared to dream. The people are coming out of their shelters, their eyes wide with wonder as they touch the wet grass for the first time. I can hear their voices, not in whispers, but in shouts of excitement that echo across the valley. We are no longer the survivors of a dead world. We are the pioneers of a living one.
The balance is restored, but remember, Seeker, that the harmony must be nurtured or it will fade once more. The archive remains as a reminder of what was lost, a library of the heart that must be studied by every generation. Do not let the clamor of the new world drown out the quiet wisdom of the old. I will remain here, the watcher of the gate, until the stars themselves decide to go out.
As the sun set on the first month of the new dawn, Alara sat by a campfire with the children of her village. She told them the story of the monolith, the stone titan, and the shadows that tried to steal the light. They listened with rapt attention, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames and the hope of a future they could finally see. The staff leaned against a nearby tree, a simple piece of wood that had once held the power to change the universe.
And so the greatest treasure of the archive wasn't the magic or the power, but the memories of how to love and care for one another. We must never forget the silence, for it teaches us the value of every word we speak and every song we sing. The world is a gift, and we are its gardeners, tasked with making sure the music never stops again. Now, let us sing the first song of the evening, so the stars know we are still here.
The music rose from the small camp and drifted across the valley, joining the sounds of the rushing water and the wind in the trees. It was a simple melody, but it carried the weight of 1,000 years of waiting and the lightness of 1,000 years of hope. The stars seemed to twinkle a little brighter in response, as if acknowledging the return of their distant cousins on the earth. The archive pulsed once, deep below the ground, a silent nod of approval to the seeker who had succeeded.
Tomorrow we will begin the work of rebuilding the great library in the sun so that no one ever has to go into the dark again. We will write our own stories now, on pages that are not made of stone or crystal, but of action and kindness. There is so much to do and so many miles to walk, but for the first time, I am not afraid of the journey. I have the light, and I have my people, and that is more than enough.
Years passed, and the desert became a legend told to children who had only ever known the shade of the great forests. Alara grew old, her teal cloak fading to a soft gray, but her eyes remained as bright as the day she entered the archive. She became the high sage of the rebuilt world, a woman whose wisdom was sought by kings and commoners alike. And though the monolith was eventually swallowed by the forest, its location was never forgotten by those who knew the song. Rest now, architect, for your work is complete, and the world is in good hands. The archive is full once more, not with the echoes of the dead, but with the vibrant dreams of the living. You have taught them that the most powerful magic is the one that brings people together in the face of the dark. The silence is a ghost of the past, and the future is a symphony that will never end. In her final moments, Alara returned to the ridge where she had first seen the rain fall upon the thirsty sand. She looked out over the world she had saved, a tapestry of green and blue that hummed with the energy of 1 billion lives. She closed her eyes and listened to the wind, hearing in its breath the voices of all those she had seen in the crystals. She was no longer just a seeker. She was a part of the song itself, an eternal note in the great harmonic.
It is so beautiful, the way the light catches the leaves and the way the water reflects the sky. I can hear them all now, the past and the present, dancing together in a way that makes perfect sense. I am tired, but I am so very happy, for I have lived to see the world dream again. Goodbye, my friends, and remember to keep singing for as long as you have breath.
And so the story of the archive comes to a close, but the song it protected continues to play in every heart. The world changed, as all things do, but the lesson of the silence remained etched in the soul of humanity. We are never truly alone, as long as we have our stories and the courage to share them with the dark. The archive waits, the sentinel watches, and the music plays on, forever and always. The cycle continues, and new seekers will one day find their way to the gates of history. They will bring their own crystals and their own questions, and I will be here to ask them what they seek. For the story of life is not a single book, but an infinite series of volumes, each one more complex than the last. Until then, let the silence be a peaceful one, filled with the memory of the light.
Remember us. Remember the girl with the teal cloak and the stone giant who learned to smile. Our time was short,
but we gave everything so that your time could be long and filled with joy. The music is yours now. Play it well, play it loud, and never let the silence take it back.
The final page is turned, but the ink is still wet on the next chapter of this world. Across 239 pages of silence, a new epic has been written in the language of the soul. We leave this world better than we found it, a testament to the power of a single spark in the vast, cold dark. The end is just the beginning of a story that will never truly be finished.